Oh great, another American destroyer. Could be what some of you are thinking right now. But I assure you, Somers is different. I am coining her the American Shimakaze, or at the very least the American Kagero. It is an absolute powerhouse of a torpedo boat at tier 7. This sets her apart from Gearing, Fletcher, and Benson, who we all know for their amazing gunboat abilities. In her current state, one might ask if this is the best torpedo boat at tier 7. Well, stick around, let's find out. First things first, the build. We are currently using Aiming Systems Mod 1, Propulsion Mod, Concealment, and the Torpedo Module in Slot 4. As for the commander, you are really going to be missing out on a lot by not using Albert Gleaves and speccing into the torpedoes. But I'll show you a heads-up comparison between this and a gunboat build, and you can decide for yourselves. But before we do, let's set up this game in the background. It is on Sleeping Giant, and thankfully it is a domination game mode, which makes playing a destroyer so much more fun. You're nearly guaranteed action early on as you can test caps and fight other DDs. Now there is an enemy aircraft carrier in this game, and that is going to decide how we play a lot of this game, so keep that in mind. On that note, we end this one with about 3600 base XP, so it is a hard-fought victory, and that goes along with having two very good players in our division as well. Now, Gleaves' Somers is going to have a 6.6 second gun reload, 89 seconds on the torps. They'll reach 12.6 kilometers and do 70 knots. Halsey's Summer, to contrast here, 5.5 second gun reload, 110 second torp reload. They'll reach 12 kilometers and do 66 knots in the water. Now the other things that we get with our current setup. Stealthy Torpedoes. I've made a video about this before in the past where we used Bey and Atago to create some pretty nasty, sneaky torpedoes in the game with venom. Stealthy torpedoes basically give your enemies less time to react and will help you get more torpedo hits. On that note, our inspirations are Eric Bey and the Azerlane Atago Commander to make everything a little bit more clandestine. Space Fishy, if you have him, her, it, whatever it is, that could be a good option as well. So with the sneaky torpedo build, let's see how Somers stacks up to the other tier 7 destroyers. Please keep in mind, these statistics, it's apples to oranges sometimes, because a lot of the destroyers are very different and they all have their original builds. Some are gunboats, some torp boats, and some are something in between, so this is a very rough comparison. With that being said, HP-wise, 17,300 is pretty good. If you threw sims on there, you would be just under 20,000. And that is worth pointing out on my chart. Anything that could be a gunboat or is a gunboat has sims on there, and that's why some of these HP numbers are getting pretty high. Sims adds another 2,600 health to each destroyer that has him. But again, Somers torpedo boat, I don't think it's necessary to use sims, just unless you really like to live dangerously and find yourself dying a lot. Now the guns we talked about. It's not great in this configuration, 6.6 seconds. On top of that, compared to Fletcher and Benson, your HE and AP shells are weaker by 100 damage apiece, and this really adds up. Now compared to Gearing, your shells do 200 damage less apiece. So again, hint, torpedo boat. Fire chance is also terrible at 5%. Add all of this together and your gun DPM is not great at all. You're near middle of the pack. Gunfights against Friesland, Fletcher, Akazuki, Loyang, ZF6, La Fantasque, and even Lightning could be a very dangerous proposition that you could see yourself getting gunned down in. So you need to be pretty cautious when approaching destroyer fights. Now I will say, this doesn't mean to never shoot your guns. Definitely fire your guns. You have good American smoke screens that you can set up and farm from if you need to. And you have decent alpha strike because if you count the guns up, you have 8. So smacking someone with an 8-gun salvo and then retreating, like you might in Shimakaze, Kagero, or Yudachi, could be a pretty good strategy. Sometimes firing right before you pass the corner of an island can work great, and it doesn't allow your enemy the chance to shoot you back. But long drawn-out gunfights with any of the higher DPM ships is going to be a losing proposition. Now, on to the good stuff. The torpedoes. You have 12 of them. That is awesome at tier 7. They reload in 89 seconds with this build, and that's not bad at all. Torp damage is also a little bit more than we're used to for most American destroyers like Benson and Fletcher. 17,900, they hit just as hard as Gearing's torps do up at legendary tier. They also reach 12.6 kilometers with old Albert Gleaves on here, and that gives you lots of options. Your probability of getting torp hits at max range, of course, goes down, but it's still an option. And now for the fun part of this torpedo build, and that is reaction time. So we calculate this using the torp speed and detectability, and I promise it's not as nerdy as it sounds. It's math that a first grader could do, but usually American destroyers already have pretty stealthy torps, but we took it a little bit farther using Gleaves and Atago, and this brings the reaction time down to about 6 seconds. So your enemy, when they finally see the torpedo, they should have about 6 seconds to react. And as I have it figured, only the Shenyang with its deep water torpedoes has a better reaction time at the tier. And all this is going to mean for you is more torpedo strikes with less effort. Take Shimakaze for instance. With a standard Tanaka build, enemies will have around 2 seconds more to react to those torps than they would with Sommers. So again, you're going to be hitting a lot of torpedoes. Now your AA rating. Keep this in the back of your mind because it's absolutely terrible. 11. Only the Yudachi has worse AA. So if you get focused by a carrier, you're going to have to get crafty. You'll probably need to sail back to some friendly ships, or you'll have to burn one of your 2 smoke screens. Top speed is pretty good on this boat. 40.1 knots is your cruising speed with this build, and with the speed boost, you can be up at around 43 knots. Turning circle and rudder are average, and the concealment is 5.6 kilometers on this setup, and that is with a level 16.2 Eric Bey, I believe. So again, this is it's pretty average. All right, so you've got the build down. Now, how does she play? Well, I would say the game in the background maybe isn't the textbook way I would play this ship, but a couple of things have kind of forced us to improvise. 1 being the enemy carrier, and 2 being our Akatsuki on our team not staying out here on this flank to keep the enemies from closing in. So we left the middle kind of just 2 trade spots with him to help our team and division mate over here out. Now, unfortunately, one of the ships over here is a Wichita. With his radar, that could make our life pretty miserable. But I digress. On to the tips. If you've spent any amount of time at all with Japanese torpedo boats or other torpedo boats in the game, then you're probably already on the right track of knowing what to do. We're not going to cover general destroyer tips such as spotting, capping, and all of that boring stuff, but let's see some specific stuff to help your Sommers gameplay out. The first thing you should note, your torpedoes come in 3 launchers, and this comes with a lot of advantages. The biggest one to note is triple stacking torpedoes. Now, obviously we know we want to be torpedoing broadside targets, right? Setting up a crossfire in a destroyer is just as important than in a battleship. You're going to have a lot more opportunities to hit a ship that is broadside than that is bow on. Now, like in our current gameplay here, Red Team doesn't always play nice. They're not just going to give up their broadside voluntarily. So here's kind of what we do. After this Wichita radar goes away and I can freely move, we want to start moving towards the edge of the map. We know what the Wichita and the Iowa are going to do. They're going to start sailing towards the middle. They're going to keep their bows pointed towards our ships over there. So if we move over to the side, we should have some nice juicy shots on the side of their ships. They can either choose to sail towards me, come out here towards me and take less torpedo hits, or they can keep sailing towards the middle of the map and take lots of torpedo hits. So Very simple strategy, set up a crossfire. Now sometimes it's just too difficult to get out to a flank and to access enemy ships' broadsides. Now in that case, you can triple stack. If someone's bow tanking you with a smaller profile, you can just basically fire all 3 sets directly at their bow, and that will give you more opportunities to hit them and deal damage. And this is way better than Benson, Fletcher, and Gearing's 2x5 configuration. You'll be able to more densely pack your torpedoes and get a lot more hits on enemies. And if you time it correctly, you could even get a permanent flood with the last stack of torpedoes. Now the 3x4 configuration also means you could fire at 3 different targets if you needed to, but that's kind of an obvious one. Now another strategy for you to try with your Sommers is afforded by their great range. And we'll move over and take a look at this clip to demonstrate why. 12 kilometers means you could fire into an area that has many layers of enemy ships. And if you happen to miss some of the ships in the front, it is very possible that ships in the back are still going to eat some of those torpedoes. You might think that the red team, they would see them coming by the time it got to the back line of ships, but I've seen many times where you can still get good torpedo hits on ships farther in the back. And that brings us back to our game here, where the only strategy left to employ is to survive. We are being chased down by a Wichita, and sometimes you might find yourself in this situation. I can't go cap any bases, I can't help my team. I simply need to kill this guy or just keep running. Once again, the triple launcher configuration is going to be better for this. We can patiently try to predict where he will start to turn and hopefully catch him there. Now I am trying to move back towards the center of the map to hopefully help the team, maybe cap some bases, because things are looking dire. It's just me and my division mate and his carrier, and yeah, it's looking rough. Now, speaking of the division mate and the carrier, this was the most clutch drop. I think he gets 2 torpedo hit, 3 on Wichita, but really what it does, it forces the Wichita to kind of turn out a little bit, and that is going to be all we need. Hitting super agile cruisers with torpedoes can be really frustrating. It's very difficult to do, but luckily these low reaction torpedoes can come in clutch. With the Wichita down, we are left with a Mogami over here and then the enemy carrier. So if we can just hit one more agile cruiser, then we'll be in pretty good shape and we could come back and win this game. We're still at a points disadvantage and we are tied on caps. Now, one thing to point out here, the enemy carrier, the guy hasn't came back and bothered me any at all. He could have put an end to this game very easily just by staying over here and spotting me. For the Wichita, for the Mogami, these guys would have made pretty short work of me. Sure, I could have smoked up and I could have hid for maybe a little bit, but both of those ships have sonar, and the Wichita, I think he was out of radar, but still. The aircraft carrier could have won this game for them very easily, and I think that's something that you, if you're an aircraft carrier player, take note of. So the Mogami's heading then this way. I figure he has 4.2 kilometers sonar, I think, like just a pretty standard sonar, but I'm hoping just to kind of bait him into staying over here and maybe shooting one more time. And apparently his sonar's not running yet. Because he eats those torpedoes. And that puts us in the points lead. And I'm guessing their carrier is probably up at the very top of the map so far away. So we're just going to move in and capture C. And that should be the win. Shout out to my division mates who did awesome. Speaking of which, B.A. Bad, the gentleman in the carrier, posts videos on his own YouTube channel. I will leave a link in the description below. Go check him out. He's a very good player. Overall, I think Sommers is a fantastic torpedo boat and offers a little more variety up at tier 7. I'm curious to hear what you all think about her, so be sure to leave those in the comment section down below. Also, a little bit of housekeeping. Over 60% of my viewers have not yet subscribed to the channel, so if you like the content, be sure to subscribe with notifications on to catch more videos like this one. Also, be sure to smash the thumbs up button. I would really appreciate it. All right, guys. I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.